Yes,
I was
we're
waiting for the
listening
other
to Crypta.
timestamp.
You know this
Yeah,
guy
okay.
named Ben. He pays for songs to be reviewed.
It's going to start at 31:23.
All right,
Okay,
31:23.
but I need your timestamp because that last one you gave me, that's way too far off. Because, you know, you've been spending the last 15 minutes talking, so the timestamp's not correct.
Okay.
Right here.
I mean,
I already changed it multiple times.
126:48.
Yeah, we started at 17. Now we're up to 26. All right, let's go.
Big homie Dan in this bitch. All right, what was it again? 31:30 you said?
Oh, for the love. Okay, it's 31:23, and don't forget, I'm going to start this one over here. Are you playing? 31:23, and let me know when you're
I'm trying to get it to 31:23, bro. What you want?
Yeah, when you get it there.
Damn.
When you get it there, let me know, because don't forget to play the official over here.
Yeah. You're such a weirdo.
I paid for this on the 3rd day of this very year.
Who said that?
DJ Ben, but I don't know why he said that. This very year.
All right, 31:23. All right, guys, here we go.
Okay, ready? We're going to go at the same time.
What's the name of the song?
The name of the song is Dark Night of the Soul.
Hey, it's at look at me. Mira, it's at 3:18, right?
Yep.
So just wait.
Because we're going to
go. Or the lyrics. This sounds scary as hell. That was Mediterranean, right? Egyptian.
I like it. It did, yeah.
That was Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah.
That was a very, very interesting
I never
record.
looked at the lyrics at all.
Yeah, look at the last. Why are you crying? What's so emotionally
because
about this song?
because it was called Dark Night of the Soul, and then at the end, like, it just like gets really beautiful. And for me, like, that was like, I forgot what the name. The song was pretty chaotic as it was playing. I didn't hate it, actually. I know previously, I guess I hated this band. I didn't hate it at all. What?
That was very brave of Ben. Like, we've only listened to this band once,
yeah,
and you hated them at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, but I enjoyed it this time. I was like, vibing with it, but it was, it had like that sort of chaotic, the vocal style was not my style. But we were talking about the name of the song is Dark Night of the Soul. So at the end of the song, all of a sudden when it switched like that, I was like, ooh, what is this? And then, and then I looked back and I looked at the name, cause I had the official over here. So I didn't see the lyrics the entire time. So I went from hearing like all of this, like, sort of chaos, I guess, from my vantage point. Then all of a sudden it switched into that like beautiful stuff. And then I came back to the title of the song, which was Dark Night of the Soul. And I was like, yo, that's what the all of that chaos is like, the Dark Night of the Soul, and the confusion and everything that goes along with it. But then like that beautiful part for me was when Jesus breaks through and is there. So that for me was like a spiritual point that I didn't expect. And so I had my like little moment. You guys were just,
I see.
Here for it.
That makes sense.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't see the lyrics at all. I gotta say, if we've seen this before, I never saw it contrasted to this degree. The girl that had her hair, the blonde hair, that looked really cool in the video, because a lot of time we go with straight hair. This was curly hair, and it was like very blonde, and it was like the black and white picture on their official video. And it was like, so you had like the dark haired girl and the blonde girl, and it was going back and forth, but it like visually looked really cool in the black and whites. Love that. Yeah. Well, let's look at the lyrics, unless you had something to say. I'm just running this entire thing now.
No. Obviously as a guitarist, that was like the big thing for me.
What was that symbol on her guitar?
Like, I don't know. It was some Egyptian.
It was pretty cool.
There's a couple Egyptian
symbol, on the
there
neck.
Was the Ankh.
Yep.
And then there was the eye. I don't know if that's the all-seeing eye.
Was the eye on her hand?
Eyes on the pyramid. Yeah.
I was like, I'm pretty sure that was the eye. Yeah.
Disenchanted and hopeless, painful feeling of emptiness, alone in a meaningless universe, old confining beliefs collapse. Soul screaming out, obscuration of myself, rude awakening, deep perception of my true self, dark night of the soul.
It's like, it sounds like somebody who is coming out, when it said old confining beliefs collapse.
Yep.
There is something about turning from those old paths. Oh my God, I'm going to get so emotional. I'm going to try not to get emotional for you guys. We were talking before about like, we saw groups of people that were led by other people that, some people might consider them a little too traditional, maybe a little bit too boring. But when those traditionalist, boring people were out of the picture, life kind of got chaotic for people.
Yeah.
And so that lyric kind of reminded me that old confining beliefs collapse. Like, in the one sense, you're saying that those belief systems, they were confining you. But in the other sense, when they collapse, like that, the whole like alone in a meaningless universe, like when you have a whole belief system and that belief system is collapsing, like it kind of disenchanted and hopeless, painful feeling of emptiness, alone in a meaningless universe.
Yeah, I'm just gonna assume she went from some sort of theism to atheism, because she's talking about a major shift in her fundamental belief system. And it's hard for me to conceive of her going from an atheist to a theist perspective and then saying that the universe is meaningless.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right? What's fascinating is that it doesn't seem to me that she has reconciled herself to the ramifications of what she's saying. Because if you go up here, you say alone in a meaningless universe. Okay, so there's no God, the sky is empty, everything is meaningless. Cool. But then how do you get a soul? If there's no God, where does your soul come into play?
Yeah.
When you say your true self, what are you talking about? if there is no God, then you are just a collocation of accidental, purposeless atoms that for some inexplicable reason maintain together, and then you are a combination of water, amino acids, and a couple other things. And somehow, when all that stuff gets mushed together, not only do we magically find consciousness, but we also find peculiar consciousnesses, meaning, why is my experience of what's happening right now different from hers, even though we're using the exact same physical mechanisms of perception? So there's a lot of questions. I'm not saying that she's wrong or that atheists are wrong or modern atheists are wrong. Obviously, I'm a theist, so I believe by definition that they're wrong. But I'm not saying that they're wrong because they're not reconciling these ideas. I'm just saying that I don't think that there is what we know intuitively, and then what we say we believe.
Yeah.
And those are not the same thing all the time.
Right.
And so it's like I could say Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback there ever was in NFL history. I can say that. But I know Patrick Mahomes is way more talented than Tom. I know that. Right?
Yeah.
But if we're having a debate, you're going to see me talk, and you'll be like, yo, this dude really believes that Tom Brady is better than Patrick Mahomes. I don't. But I have other reasons for why I'm going to say that if we get into an argument. And so this question is really important.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, that I pulled out here, it says alone in a meaningless universe. So if you have a universe that's completely meaningless, how can you have a true self? Deep perception of my true self. Where's the true part of yourself? Like, how can there be? Truth is a foundation. Truth is something you can rest on. That is not something that's meaningless, and nor is it something that's in a vacuous environment. So we're talking about a meaningless universe juxtaposed to a true self.
Well, it's fascinating because here is BC, who's correctly pointing out a consistent materialist worldview. What is a soul? Measure the weight of the soul. Correct.
Yep.
That is a question or a response that every consistent materialist or physicalist would use. If I can't measure the thing in a lab, it's not real. Okay? That's physicalism. So you can't point me to the location of the soul, therefore it's not real. Okay? That's the argument. But of course, what BC doesn't realize is that BC's entire worldview is based on the laws of logic. When you go to a person says, I don't believe in this religion stuff. I believe in the scientific method. I agree. Mashallah. The scientific method is dependent and contingent upon the laws of logic.
Yep.
BC, you will never find a lab anywhere in the universe where you can measure the law of non-contradiction. There's no lab that's going to tell you what the circumference of the law of the excluded middle is, etc., etc. The idea that the only thing that's real are things that could be put in a lab is completely undercut by the very fact that you have a scientific method in the first place. Science is based on logic and reason, and logic and reason are non-physical phenomena. So it's impossible. It is impossible. It is impossible for secularists to justify even the concept of reason itself. The concept of reason indicates that there are ultimate truths. And what we're calling reasons are simply the mental machinations that we use to get to the truth. That's all reason is. Reason is the vehicle by which we get to and apprehend truth. You say there's no ultimate God, there's no ultimate truth, then reason is just completely nonsensical as an idea. It's a complete non-starter right from the beginning. These are things that require meditation. Now look. Gibberish.
Talking gibberish.
I don't think it's gibberish to say that we rely on the scientific method to ascertain reality, and the scientific method is contingent on the law of logic, and the laws of logic are not measurable phenomena that we see in the physical universe. These are acts of mentation that are non-physical and are metaphysical, which would indicate that consciousness would be fundamental and not matter. That's the argument. I don't think it's gibberish. I think some of the best physicists and physicalists in the world today are struggling mightily to defend it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's gibberish.
What you're saying is we understand physical matter, stuff that's worked out in a science lab by using logic, and logic can't be measured in a lab. So that means that logic is outside of that scientific stuff. So
and superior to it.
Superior to it because that's how we measure.
The method is contingent on it.
Right. I think that's what he's saying.
Right.
It's a little.
So.
Vinny's very smart.
That's all I'm saying. So when this woman is talking about there's an empty universe, but then simultaneously she's talking about a soul, and then the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is almost exclusively a religious Christian concept.
Yeah.
It is what happens to saints when they go through a terrible period of time. And this is a common phenomenon. And this phraseology originally came from a Christian worldview. So this is what I'm saying with this woman. I'm like, at the one hand, she's saying, "Oh, my confining beliefs have collapsed," which is really interesting because a lot of people look at the law of God or belief in God as confinement, and now you're free. But it's like even in the song, and it's almost a theme when people like reject God and go to the dark side. There's still a price.
Yeah.
So now she's like, you know what? I'm not listening to any of this hocus pocus bullshit. I'm a modern person. I don't need any of this stuff. Cool. And now you're in a dark night of your soul. You're about to kill yourself. So all I'm saying is that, like, I think we got to think these things through a little bit more before we start making these statements. Soul is screaming out, obscuration of myself, rude awakening, deep perception of my true self. You know what's funny? I was listening to Sam Harris about a year and a half ago, and Sam Harris, being consistent with his professed atheism, says that the self is a myth. There is no self.
Wait, who's that? Sam Harris?
Sam Harris.
Okay.
He literally said, there's no such thing as a self. You are your body. Right? Because if a person says, when you say myself, you're saying that there's a part of you that's separate from your body. And you're kind of like a ghost in a machine driving around this body. So Sam Harris is like, no, let's be consistent with our atheism. No, you don't have a self. All of your actions and your inclinations, even your thoughts, are pre-programmed by nature. This is compatibilism. You're not actually making any decisions. Your brain is a computer. It's on autopilot. You're not actually free making any real decisions. That's the alternative.
But why do you suffer then? How can you suffer if you're pre-programmed and you're just doing what your programming is?
Well, your suffering is a reaction to stimuli. That has nothing to do with whether or not that situation was planned, right?
I guess it sounded so robotic when you said it that way.
Well, it is. But think about it. Think about it. From their perspective, the brain is just a control center to work the machine. And a lot of that shit is automatic. Like, you're not telling your heart to breathe. You're not telling your lungs to breathe, blah, blah, blah. So Sam Harris is saying, the things that you think are choices are not choices either. So me doing this show right now is just another effect of my brain as much as my heart beating or my lungs beating would be. That's the idea. So you don't actually have an actual self in his worldview. And again, it sounds crazy, but it sounds crazy to people who have been raised with the idea that they have a soul and all the rest of it. So you see the conflict here. When she talks about dark night of the soul, surrender to the dark night of the soul, look what she says. Freedom emerged through purging.
Yeah.
Annihilation of past belief, contemplation with radical honesty, growth to wider consciousness, learn from my own darkness. So what she's saying
Good luck.
What she's saying is, it was horrible. It went through a dark night of the soul, but I emerged on the other side of it. I'm now wider in my consciousness, and I've learned from my own darkness. For what reason, though? Because you said above that the universe is meaningless. So who cares if you're confronting this thing with radical honesty now? What is the value in radical honesty if the universe is empty?
And meaningless.
Now, for me, I understand radical honesty. Well, what is honesty? Honesty is a allegiance to the truth. Okay, what is truth? Truth is that which corresponds to reality. Okay, what is God? God is ultimate reality. Okay, so that means the closer I get to truth, the closer I get to God. That's the calculation. That's why honesty is important in my worldview, because dishonesty gets me farther away from ultimate reality, and the goal of existence is to apprehend and enjoy ultimate reality. So dishonesty then stops me from that eventuality. That's why it's bad, and that's why honesty is good. But if the universe is empty and there's no reason for anything, then who cares about your honesty, and what is honesty in the first place? These are all things that I wish we would all like think through together.
I think for me, I can't separate the where did she say she's learning from her own darkness?
Yeah. Growth to wider consciousness, learn from my own darkness.
But to me, like, I keep seeing the song like kind of circular. So like she learns from her own darkness, but then I go back up to the painful feeling of emptiness, alone in a meaningless universe. Like, what you're learning from your own darkness is not truth. What you're learning from your own darkness is causing her obviously some great suffering. But yeah, wow, that's wild.
This is a very good observation by Controller, who usually has very good observations. She might conflate soul and personal faith with the church, and I separated from the evangelical church years ago. I don't know if I have officially separated from the evangelical church, but I do find myself saying things like the evangelicals, the way I used to say the Catholics. And right now in my mind, evangelicals and Catholics are not too far apart, where, I don't know, 5 years ago, I'd have put them on different universes. I think that is a very, very astute observation and would reconcile the contradiction. Because you cannot have a soul, you cannot value honesty and truth and all these things in a completely atheistic worldview. But you can, if you're conflating, separating from God and separating with the ultimate conscious reality, if you conflate being in the church and with the church and being aligned with the church, especially your local church, especially a church you grew up with, because a lot of people have a very small understanding even of what the church is. Like, you know, especially with the remnant theology, there's going to be like 5 people saved. There's a lot of people that don't understand this about modern Western American Christianity. When modern evangelicals see declining numbers in Christianity, they celebrate because they think this means the rapture is like right around the corner. Like they're happy about that. Like when they see apostasy in the Western world, they're happy about that because they're like, we're getting raptured in 2 minutes.
That's right.
And so it has terrible, that theology has terrible ramifications. It's one of the reasons why the Gazans are suffering as horribly as they are.
Yep.
I would say that I'm not going to say it's exclusively a Christian issue, but American evangelicals are we absolutely have a bunch of Gazan blood on our hands for sure. What were you?
Then since they were Brazilian, they probably are talking about the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah,
I could see that.
I think the other thing too for me when it hit that kind of end point, so Vinny talks about focus on the family sometimes, like back in the day, like that was kind of like your chill point was to listen to them, and I've actually been putting them on as of late.
Yeah,
and it's funny because I don't know why my face just got flushed when I said that, but it did. I'm really enjoying listening to what they have to say and the sort of stability that they have because they're like, I don't know, the way that they talk about things, it just kind of like brings focus on the family.
Oh, yeah.
And like I had that when I was way a kid and I think that I abandoned all of that stuff. But you do sort of feel like, now I'm just going back up to that original old confining beliefs collapse. Like I felt like that when I was abandoning all of that stuff, like that sort of collapsing. And now I feel like I'm rebuilding and I'm like, I'm more open to, you know, the Orthodox Church, the Catholic, you know, the Catholics, what do they have to say about things? Let's bring back the, you know, focus on the family and all that stuff. And I'm more open to listening to more people and taking in more information and saying, well, you know what, that's not right, but that's good over there. And just, I'm finding that feeling the collapse is horrible, and it does make you feel like you're in a sort of meaningless, painful emptiness, hopeless, very hopeless. But that ending of the song, when it just opened up and got beautiful like that, that to me is like the coming back and the rebuilding of those older ways, which was why I brought up those people that when they were around, the sort of traditional people, like life was better for people, but once those groups separated, life got really hard for people. I think that there's something to be said of some of the older ways. Like, not everything in the old way is better, because some of the old ways are just are not. Mm-hmm. But some of those old ways are old ways for a reason. Yeah.
She says, obscuration of myself, rude awakening, deeper perception of my true self. See, that's the other thing, is that you really, people say you can't know where you're going unless you know where you came from, blah, 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 blah. We've struggled. The last 3 songs, when these people have turned their back on their traditional Christian upbringing, all 3 of them have an identity problem.
Yep.
And so now she's talking about the obscuration of her true self.
Yeah.
How can you have a true self if you are just the reverberations of the mechanistic moves of your brain reacting to the environment for the cause of promoting your genes? That's the meaning of life from a secular view. So concepts like self, like an individual that has a like this idea that there's something like inherently valuable and unique about you is not a secular idea. All value in a secular understanding, and I'm not slamming secularism, I'm just talking pure logic here. All value in secularism is what they call fiction or legal fiction. We know you, young woman, have no actual ultimate value, but let's tell a story that you are valuable, and all of us will pretend that you're valuable, even all of us know inherently you're not valuable. So that's the truth. That's the ultimate truth in a secular worldview. If the sky is empty, that's the ultimate truth. So where do you get this idea that there's something unique about you that should be explored and celebrated? Mm-hmm. Well, I could tell you why. What I say is that you're in the image of God. You represent God on the earth, and there has to be billions and billions of us for all eternity, because God is an infinite being. And so the infinite aspects of the all of God's nature, all of who he is summed up in the one man, Jesus Christ, and then is democratized almost to us. So the reason I want to get to know Delaney and I want to understand her idiosyncrasies, and the reason that, when I think about health throughout the day, I am seeing something about God through Jay's music, or to Middle Earth, wisdom, or even Ben Webb's horrible sarcasm, but at root, a real care for poor. I am seeing things about God that I would not have seen otherwise. And that is why it is literally an honor to know you people. But if the sky is empty and everything is...
I think the other thing, too, that's cool is that you're not given that honor of being made in the image and likeness of God and exalted to that point because you're a part of our religion. That's not just for Christians. That's for everybody. Every single person that's ever walked the face of this planet has been made in the image and likeness of God. And then you choose whether or not you're going to walk in that. So it's like, people are always out here saying like, oh, I wish I could be like that friggin' bird so I could fly off, or I could, run like that horse across the prairies or whatever. Like, people always seeing like a being doing what it was ultimately made to do. And then we're like, I want to be that.
Yep.
You're not a horse. You're not a bird.
Right.
You're not a fish. You're a human being made in the image and likeness of God. And when you walk in that freedom, like we said, for freedom, Christ has set you free. That breaks those chains that she was talking about in the previous song. When you walk in that, then you are the dolphin swimming as a dolphin does. You're the bird that flies as a free bird. You're a person being what you were made to be, and you walk in that light. That's freedom.
Yeah.
And that's for everybody.
Yeah,
not just if you're part of our religion.
Yeah. Freedom is ultimately...
Our religion helps you to walk in it, though.
our religion is the only way to freedom.
Right.
You can have echoes or reverberations or you know, you can be downstream of that. Like, for example, living in a Western world that has all these hospitals everywhere. Mm-hmm. So you can not be a Christian and benefit immensely. But if what Jesus said is true, it's the only way. He's the only way. He's the only way to find truth. And he's the only way to get ultimate revelation about who you actually are. You cannot know. This is the claim. You cannot know what you are or who you are without knowing him. End of story. That's the claim. Mm-hmm. And claims like that make life very simple. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm right, then you abandon everything and cling to that man, Jesus Christ. If I'm wrong, then forget it. Just listen to the song and hang out and play your guitar. Eat, drink, and be merry.
For tomorrow you die. It's the end of that verse.
But all I got is the man from Nazareth. That's all I got. But I do agree. The dark night of the soul is necessary for transformation, because most of us travel the path of least resistance. And I think there's a lot of lessons that I could have learned if I would have just sat down there and obediently read my Bible and said, okay. You know, there's a scripture where God says, don't be like the horse and the mule who has to have a bit and bridle on his mouth, otherwise he won't stay next to you. He says, I will watch you with my eye over. I will teach you in the ways that are good. So God's disposition is not to fuck my life up and put me in a dark night of the soul. Mm-hmm. But, you know, with me, I'm saying with me, most of those have to do with my own doing, to be honest with you. All right, smoke them if you got them. 9.4, dear listener. all these indictments are ruining my freedom. I am the most persecuted man in America. Look what happened to our great country. Hey, if Trump can still be a Christian, what's your excuse? Look at all the troubles that this man has had to deal with since the first day he was born.
Yeah.
9.8.
A small loan of $1 million.
A small loan of $1 million.
Loan. Okay, I'm going to give...
Your boy was struggling.
You gave this a 9.8?
I give it a 9.8.
Wow.
Your boy was struggling.
9.6 for me. Loved that ending after the whole thing.
I was struggling, bro. Hey, we got one more song for you beautiful people.
Well, I have one more thing to say. I also did that. You said sometimes the dark night of the soul is like by your own choosing. I absolutely did that. One of these days, I'm going to open up the package and let you guys hear more about it. But I absolutely chose a bunch of decisions for my life that were not... that brought me to a state of hopelessness. And this day, not like days previously when I was in it, but this day I'm grateful for it, because if I didn't have the dark night of the soul let me see more where I was really at. Without the dark night of the soul, I think I would have thought that, you know, I was pretty much okay, but I was really in turmoil. And so I'm grateful for my dark night of the soul, because it brought me to like the ending of that song. So, you know, he was both gracious and merciful is what I say.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it brings meaning. And all I could say to you is if you're not going through one, that means you just went through one, or you're about to go through one. And what I would say to that is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Pray.
Pray. Get your friends to pray for you. Mm-hmm. 9.8, we got one more song on the other side of the break.
We'll be right back.
One more song on the other side of the break. Commercial break. We'll be right back.